we start uh, talk. I will invite Professor Iskandar for opening remarks. Time is yours, Professor Iskandar.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Begin. Just very short, we are very grateful for your coming today, especially to Professor Alec Rogers from Ocean Census, which is a really exciting endeavor, yeah, in unraveling the taxonomy or species in new species in the world, yeah. So we also thank you very much for attendance of our partner university from the region. I noted that from the Philippines, yeah, here, and also not only IPB student, also other students in Indonesia. So again, thank you, Alex, for your time and your coming. We hope to host you here in Indonesia, face in the near future. Enjoy the IPB talk. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Iskander, and thank you, Dr. Begin. I will share my screen and begin the talk. So let me just dial up the presentation. I hope you can all see that. Yes? Okay, fantastic. So today I'm going to talk to you about the Ocean Census program. This is a new program funded by the Nippon Foundation of Japan and run by the Necton Foundation in the UK, which is a UK-based charity which investigates marine ecosystems for improved management around the world. Just a little bit about my background. I'm a marine biologist of more than 30 years experience. Most of my work has been in the deep sea. So work on seamounts, hydrothermal vents, cold water coral reefs, as well as polar ecology and ocean management. I've worked at a number of UK institutions, including the Marine Biological Association in Plymouth, Southampton Oceanography Centre, British Antarctic Survey, the Zoological Society of London, University of Oxford, and RevOcean in Norway. So I thought I'd start by saying a bit about the importance of the ocean to us. And this is probably of particular importance in the case of Indonesia, given its very complex and extremely lengthy coastline and large area of ocean within its EEZ. The ocean obviously delivers a wide range of goods and services to humankind, from very obvious things such as the provision of food through fisheries to the less obvious things like nutrient cycling, absorption of CO2, and also things like cultural services through science and so on. It's been estimated that gross marine product is the equivalent of up to $2.5 trillion per annum. And if the ocean wasn't an economy, it would be the world's 7th largest. But of course, trying to actually express the ocean's importance in monetary terms is a very controversial activity, because without many of the services the ocean provides, the Earth system simply would not function. So human society is dependent on nature, and indeed our entire economies are based on the biosphere. And these are just two diagrams illustrating that point from the Economics of Biodiversity report, which was published in the UK in 2021. But unfortunately, our relationship with nature has become quite an abusive one. This is just one measure of the decline in biodiversity. It's the Living Planet Index. And as you can see, there's been a substantial decline in the Living Planet Index from 1970 to the present time, nearly a 70% decline. The Living Planet Index essentially monitors trends in populations of a wide range of organisms, including mammals, birds, reptiles, amphibians, and fish. Of course, those are the numbers, but we are aware more locally of significant impacts on the ocean as a result of local and global human activities. Coral reefs are now one of the most threatened ecosystems on Earth as a result of ocean warming. If we look at iconic animals like sharks and rays, we find that they've undergone something like a 71% decline since the 1970s, and more than 3/4 of species of pelagic sharks and rays are now threatened with extinction. So we can ask why these declines are happening. We've actually looked at this in a study which was carried out several years ago now. What we see is that fishing and the harmful impacts of fishing are probably the main local drivers of species decline, but the drivers of decline really vary depending on what group of organisms you look at. So, for example, for seabirds, one of the main threats of decline is the impacts of invasive species. And to give us an idea of just how serious this situation is becoming, last year we were in the Chagos archipelago, and we were looking for this animal. It's a brain coral called Tenella shagui, and it's actually one of the rarest corals in the world. It's only found in the Chagos archipelago and in some parts of Mauritius, and the coral is highly threatened as a result of mass coral bleaching, which is resulting from ocean warming. This last year, a rescue mission was sent out to collect several specimens of this coral to keep in aquaria, because the suspicion was that the coral would go extinct in the wild as a result of the latest El Nino episode. And of course, there are new activities in the ocean which potentially threaten marine life. This is an example, marine mining. And here we're talking about several different types of activities: mining of manganese nodules, seabed massive sulfides, cobalt crusts on seamounts, and marine phosphates. And if we look at the areas where these deposits occur, then you will see that they occur pretty much throughout the global ocean. And there are now numerous countries taking out licenses for exploratory mining around the oceans. And indeed, the government of Norway has just made it lawful to mine in the ocean off Norway. Here we see an example of an animal from a hydrothermal vent in the Indian Ocean. This is the scalyfoot snail. And out of the 3 hydrothermal vent sites where this snail is found, and it is only 3 that we know of so far, 2 of those sites are under mining exploration licenses. So this animal has now been registered as endangered in the IUCN Red List because of the threat of deep sea mining. This animal only lives in an area of 0.02 square kilometers, as far as we know, in the ocean. So it has a very, very small geographic distribution. So if we look at diversity in the ocean, the first thing to note is that species diversity is actually, as far as we know, higher on land, mainly as a result of the very high number of insect species. But of course, if we look at higher phylogenetic diversity, that is much higher in the ocean than on land and in fresh water. So out of 33 phyla, 32 occur in the ocean, but only 17 on land and in fresh water. Looking at the global pattern of marine species diversity, of course, the Indo-West Pacific Coral Triangle comes out as the area with the highest diversity in shallow waters in the ocean. This is again from a paper we published in 2022. You can see the reference there if you're interested. But the oceans are still very poorly explored for diversity. And this is one example, the northern Mozambique Channel, which is now considered to possibly be the second most diverse area in the world, a position that's traditionally been awarded to the Caribbean. The northern Mozambique Channel is recognised as having high levels of connectivity to the Indo-West Pacific Coral Triangle, but it has over geological timescales retained species, and there are unique relic species in this area from the Tethys Sea. So it's an area which has been very poorly explored and one which we're very, very interested in. Patterns of global biodiversity of marine species do not remain the same moving from shallow water into deep waters. And in fact, in deep water, what we find is the peaks of biodiversity tend to be at mid-latitudes. And this is because the supply of food from the surface to deep water is highest at these mid-latitudes. From the Census of Marine Life, which was completed in 2010, we know that our records of species decrease moving away from continents and into deeper waters. And if we look at the overall estimated diversity of species, it's somewhere between 1 and 2 million at the moment. Only about 200,000 species have actually been described. So we've only actually described 10 to 25% of the marine life that's out there in the ocean. These numbers may be very wide of the actual truth in terms of marine species diversity. Based on expert opinion, it's been estimated that there may be over 800,000 species associated with coral reefs alone. The range of that estimate is somewhere between 500,000 to 1.3 million species. Nearly a third of all named marine species occur on tropical coral reefs. But what we must bear in mind here is that we've only investigated mainly shallow water parts of tropical coral reefs. And in fact, if we look into the deeper parts of these reefs, into the mesophotic reef ecosystems, which occur from 40 to 150 meters depth, then there may be far more species than we've realized living on these coral reefs. These are poorly studied, and whenever we look at these mesophotic reef ecosystems, we find many more new species, including of fish. So it's not just invertebrates that are being found in these habitats. Just to demonstrate how poorly understood the ocean is, this is an example from my own research. These are the first deep sea high temperature hydrothermal vents found in the Antarctic. So you can see these very impressive chimneys with fluids emanating at a temperature of about 386 degrees C. Now, back in the early 2000s, when we decided to do this work, hydrothermal vents have been explored in the Atlantic, the Indian Ocean, and the Pacific. And it's been found that although there were marked differences in the fauna between these oceans, and indeed in the fauna within these oceans in the case of the Pacific, and comparing the Eastern Pacific with the Western, there were similarities. Particularly the Indian Ocean seemed to have elements of hydrothermal vent fauna from both the Atlantic and the Pacific Ocean. And so we thought that it might be the case that the Southern Ocean was acting as a connector between these other global oceans over geological timescales. So we went to the Southern Ocean, and this was despite the fact that prior to our exploration, it was considered that it was impossible to do deep sea work using remotely operated vehicles and other deep submergence equipment in these oceans. This shows you why. This particular storm had a swell of 15 meters, so that's 15-meter high waves. So very extreme weather. But we did find hydrothermal vents, and they were located on this area called the East Scotia Ridge. This is South Georgia, the Falkland Islands, the South Sandwich Trench. And the hydrothermal vents were located in areas where that ridge had swollen. So we could actually see the ridge bulging on the multi-beam maps. And the reason for that bulge was the presence of a magma chamber underneath the ridge. And when we actually investigated these hydrothermal vents using remotely operated vehicles or robots, we were in for a big surprise, because the animals we were not related to any that had previously been seen on hydrothermal vents. You can see here these, let me just jump into this. These animals are called Yeti crabs. This was a new species of Yeti crab. You'll see that they have a very furry chest. And the reason for that is that they actually grow bacteria which live off the hydrothermal fluids on the hairs on their chest. And then they comb those hairs to feed, essentially. And as you'll see, there were huge numbers of these animals at these vents. The large brown things you can see on the video here are a new species, a new genus of marine snail. The tiny green blebs on them are small limpets, again a gastropod mollusk, a new species, and these giant sea anemones living around the vent feeding on the crabs and other animals. What was really surprising about these vents was what we didn't find. So we didn't find any of the animals we expected to find from or related to the Atlantic or Pacific vents. It was an entirely different fauna. And indeed, we analysed the composition of these hydrothermal vents compared to those elsewhere in the world, and came up with a new pattern of biogeography for hydrothermal vents, showing 11 distinct provinces in terms of the species composition of these communities. And the point I really want to make here is that we're still in a situation where a single oceanographic cruise can completely change our idea of the distribution of life in a habitat like hydrothermal vents. So if we look at the discovery rate of marine species over time, you can see here, this is from the 1750s all the way through to the present day. What we see is that from about the mid-19th century, there has been little change in the rate of discovery of marine life. And this is a really startling fact. On average, it takes about 13.5 years to describe a species from when it's collected. So that includes the actual collection process, sorting the animals, maybe doing some DNA sequencing, designating a type specimen, and writing a paper which describes the species. This leaves us with a really significant problem, because in a world where marine diversity is in decline, we can't wait for the many hundreds of years it's going to take to gain a better understanding of marine life. And this is where the Ocean Census Program comes in. The program was conceived by the Nippon Foundation with the aim of accelerating the discovery of marine life globally. The Necton Foundation in the UK was asked to do a feasibility study, which I led, and that took about 2 years, after which the program was funded. We actually drew on expertise from across the world, including Indonesia, in this feasibility study, and we formed different working groups looking at science, data, communications, and capacity development. And this is a kind of scheme of the entire program, really. So the Nippon Foundation wanted us to engage in new expeditions around the world to discover marine life. We collect specimens during these expeditions, and those specimens are deposited in local or regional biodiversity centres. We use new technologies to accelerate the taxonomic process, the process of discovery and description of new species, and also new ways of working. We also aim to digitize all the information related to our animals and seaweeds, with the aim of promoting cyber taxonomy, and that is essentially internet enhanced taxonomy. So this digitization process really forms around the concept of a digital life form. So here, when we collect an organism, it acquires a globally unique identifier, and all the data associated with it are digitized. And this really creates a virtual organism. And this remains in perpetuity right through from collection and discovery of a species through to its actual description. And what this means is that scientists can actually start to identify animals before they're officially described. So ecologists, for example, can use this information to give a consistent identification to an organism prior to its description. The digitization process is quite complex. So as I said, during an expedition, we generate data, the globally unique identifier. We identify the animals as far as we can. The location where the species was sampled or observed is recorded. Photos and video are recorded, DNA sequence data, and environmental measurements taken. And this information is all digitized, and we hope will eventually feed into a new system we're developing called the Cyber Biodiversity System. This system will use internationally agreed standard terms, labels, and definitions. It will enable machine-to-machine communications, traceability of data from the data producer to data users. It will automatically assign data licenses and automatically transfer data to global databases such as the Ocean Biodiversity Information System. In terms of new technologies, we're looking across all the technologies associated with discovery of marine life. So this includes new technologies to actually collect marine life. And you see some examples here. This is a rotary actuated sampler deployed from an ROV or submersible, which enables the collection of very, very delicate animals from pelagic ecosystems. The rather ferocious looking corer you can see in the photograph there is for collecting very loose and unconsolidated sediments around areas like cold water coral reefs where you get lots of calcareous sediment. New imaging technologies are particularly of interest to us because they are a real enabler of cyber taxonomy. So high resolution 2D and 3D imaging really enables taxonomists to examine specimens without having to go to a museum or without having to request loans from a museum or a country of its material. And this is a fundamental process in taxonomy that at the moment slows taxonomy down. But if we can produce images like this and enable cyber taxonomy, that in itself will accelerate the whole process of species discovery and description. There is also DNA sequencing technology, of course, and we're now into third generation sequencing, including portable sequencers that can be deployed in the field. And you can see here, this is an Oxford nanopore sequencing chip. It's about this big, and this enables sequencing of whole genomes in the field. And we're going to be developing this technology for use on our expeditions. And of course, there's the use of machine learning and artificial intelligence, which can be applied to a range of biodiversity survey and monitoring approaches, such as automated identification of species from video. So this is the type of technology that our work can feed into to enable countries to monitor changes in their diversity. Ocean census expeditions occur all the way from the seashore to the deepest parts of the ocean. So we don't only work in the deep sea, we don't only work on mesophotic ecosystems, we work on all marine ecosystems. But obviously, as I said earlier, the further away from shore we operate and in the deeper water, the higher the chances of finding new species. We're also looking at capacity development as another way of accelerating the discovery of marine species. Obviously, if there are more scientists engaged in species discovery and description, then the rate of description will increase. So we're particularly interested in capacity development, in training early career researchers, particularly from low and middle income countries, to really start to distribute taxonomic expertise across the world rather than just in wealthy countries. And one of our major principles is co-production of science. So when we work with a country such as Indonesia, we co-produce our expeditions. And that means working with people in country and planning the expeditions, undertaking field work, undertaking data analysis, and writing papers and reports and so on. And this means that our work is of greatest benefit for the country. It involves state scientists and policymakers and really builds the biodiversity value chain within the state. And really, this leads us on to the fact that Ocean Census is a network. We have a growing network of taxonomic researchers globally. That number is over 300. I think Verity can probably tell us exactly where that number has got to at some point today. But the idea is to really make this a global effort by networking marine taxonomists from all around the world and anchoring that network in biodiversity centres located within countries and within regions, also all around the world. The network extends beyond science and really includes people like technology providers, so industry, other philanthropic organisations that can provide funding, or ships and other technology for us to use, businesses and civil society organisations and so on. Another major facet of ocean census is public engagement. The Nippon Foundation were very keen that our expeditions were used as an anchor point to educate the public about the marvels of the ocean and how important the ocean is, to really get the public to value the ocean and to put pressure on politicians really to start to work to conserve the ocean. So we have the Ocean Census Media Centre. It's established as a news agency, and we amplify discoveries and stories from the ocean census expeditions and from partnering scientific organisations. And our media are distributed by Associated Press, a global news organisation. And you can see a couple of examples here from a Nekton expedition to the Maldives, where both Maldivian ministers, but also citizens were able to interact with Nekton and really become involved in telling their own stories about the ocean. So what do we hope the impact of ocean census will be? Well, we hope to increase species discovery in the ocean tenfold. That's a very ambitious target, but I think you'll realise after the next few slides that it may be possible. We intend to enable cyber taxonomy and the entire digital taxonomic entity concept, to develop a long-lasting and equitable network of global marine taxonomists and biodiversity scientists, to educate and enthuse the public on the importance of marine life, to secure long-lasting stewardship of biological specimens and genetic data, to map life in the ocean at high resolution for the first time, to enable new biodiversity monitoring tools, to foster improved management of the ocean, and to drive fundamental discoveries in biological sciences, including new pharmaceuticals and other products. Our programme began in April 2023. We're still in our first year of activities. Our initial funding is for 3 years, but the programme has been developed as a 10-year programme. There is further funding available under a parallel programme called Ocean Shot, and we are working closely with people who've received funding from this programme. It's administered by the Sasakawa Peace Foundation in Japan, and the implementing organisation is the Nekton Foundation based in Oxford in the UK, where I'm talking to you from today. And we're in the process of establishing multiple partners around the world to engage in this project. So how are we doing? Well, we had our first flagship expedition in November. This was in Micronesia and specifically Tenerife. And you can see where these islands are located here off Africa in the Northeast Atlantic. And we co-produced an expedition with local institutions, including Government Research Institute, the local museum, and the local universities. Samples collected during the expedition were lodged with the museum in Santa Cruz in Tenerife, so will remain in Tenerife into the future. We trained students and undertook sampling using submersibles and technical divers. And in just 3 weeks in this area, we know we've discovered probably more than 30 new species. But once all the material is worked up, it will probably be double or treble that number. And this is really remarkable because Micronesia has been explored for its biodiversity for 150 years. So if we can, in the space of 3 weeks, discover all these new species in a place which has been so well researched, then imagine how many species we are likely to uncover when working in less explored parts of the world. Another notable success from the expedition was the fact that we managed to describe a new species, and it's actually this species of marine snail you can see on the screen here, in just 36 hours. And that was from the time of collection through to actually having a fully edited manuscript ready for publication. Many of the species we found were very small. So you can see here a nematode. The black dots on that nematode are bacterial symbionts living in the body of the animal. A number of microgastropods like the one in the photograph here, possible new species of flatworms, and you can see a new species of snapping shrimp or alphaid here on the screen as well. But it wasn't just small animals. We've also found new corals and probably new sponges as well. So new megafauna. What's happening next for us is an expedition to the Southwest Pacific, and specifically the Bounty Trough off New Zealand. I fly out on Sunday to work in this area. It's quite a large area, but forms a kind of basin or trough lying between the Chatham Rise and the Campbell Plateau off South Island, New Zealand. The area is virtually unsampled, and we will be sampling marine life down to about 5,000 meters on that expedition. So that's all I wanted to say today. Just to summarize, that the ocean biodiversity crisis is materializing as a rapid decline of marine species. We need to understand the distribution of life in the ocean to manage human activities, particularly in terms of the sustainable blue economy. An ocean census aims to accelerate the discovery of life in the ocean and engage the public to promote sustainable ocean stewardship. And with that, I will stop sharing and open the floor to any questions you might have.
Okay, thank you very much, Alex. Oh, very interesting findings, yeah. So
Yeah.
many new species, and then there's a lot of place for explore. Yeah, even in the area that already explored. Yeah, we still
Indeed,
can
yeah.
find the new species. Oh, it's quite amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And for next, probably before the question and answer, it's better to us to take some pictures for documentation. Please open the your camera.
It's open, I think.
Yeah, all the participants we invite and remove the highlight, I think. Okay, please, who will take a picture? Mbak Puput or?
Yeah, I will, Dr. Begin.
Okay.
I think I'll wait a few more minutes till everyone's open their camera. Okay, there are just 3 slides, so allow me to take the picture. And give this 1 minute. Okay, on 1, 2, 3. And next slide, please hold your smiles. 1, 2, 3. And the last slide, 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you, Dr.
Thank
Begin. I'll
you.
give it back to you.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, I invite questions or suggestions from the audience. Yeah, for me it's very excited, yeah, because Rogers, me and my research group start to explore the mesophotic coral in some part of Indonesia.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, we start to explore Lombok and Bali.
Oh, lovely. I think that the mesophotic coral ecosystems are amongst the most exciting to explore at the present time. Somebody was, I saw an estimate the other day that for every, I think it was hour of mesophotic exploration in some parts of the world, they're finding one new species of fish. So that's pretty impressive.
Really impressive, yeah. Okay. Any questions or suggestions or curiosity?
Yeah,
So-
I have question to
silakan,
Yeah.
Profesor.
Thank you for the excellent presentation. Yeah. So considering Indonesia expansive area, just from the western part and then to the eastern part, so we have Wallacea line as well. What are the best strategy if we would like to do, let's say, sampling or campaign on the on doing the ocean census? Yeah. So, and then of course, in Indonesia, we are connected with many local universities as well, like IPB, from Aceh to Papua, West Papua for example, you know about the Raja Ampat or marine protected area or bird seascape, yeah, in this Irian Jaya or Papua Island, yeah. So what are the best strategies to do this kind of ocean census activities?
Well, I think that Indonesia is extremely important to ocean census because it is right in the center of the Indo-West Pacific Coral Triangle, and that means that the species diversity in the region is amongst the highest in the world, and obviously that means that the opportunities for species discovery are extremely high in the Indonesia region. I think the best strategy for us will be to form alliances across the country with academic institutions and to really allow the scientists in those institutions to direct us to the locations where, one, it's practical for us to actually work, but two, where there's going to be a high opportunity for species discovery. Also, we're very interested, as I said, in capacity development. So part of that would also be looking at opportunities to train Indonesian scientists in taxonomy and to also collect or make collections of marine life that can be retained in Indonesian institutions over the long term. So I guess the long and short of what I'm saying there is that we would look to be guided by experts in country as to the best locations to go and work. I think the possibility of species discovery is high in shallow water, but obviously if we can move into mesophotic depths, then that possibility is even higher. And then when a ship of opportunity passes through the region, something like the Schmidt Ocean Institute's Falcor 2, then we can potentially harness that platform to actually go into even deeper waters around Indonesia as well. And again, all of those types of expeditions, whether they're expeditions using technical diving or large ships, would all be done in terms of co-production with Indonesian scientists. So we would expect to have a high percentage of Indonesians actually on those expeditions. So that certainly would be our first thought in terms of a strategy for working with Indonesia. obviously with such a large and complex country, we would probably be looking at a whole campaign of expeditions rather than just one or two. So the development of a longer term working relationship, I think, would be important.
Thank you. I think there is also a question from the college from the neighbor country, from the Philippines, Mindanao, in the text box, in the
Yes.
chat box. Yeah, please.
Yeah, the questions.
Yeah, we have not had any contact with the Philippines as yet. We would welcome scientists from the Philippines to join our network and certainly make suggestions as to how to engage with academics and the government in the Philippines to undertake expeditions there. And certainly mesophotic locations are of great interest to us. We have very, very good technical dive teams working with us, capable of working to 100 meters or more in depth. So we'd certainly be very happy to work in the Philippines. The next question about microplastics. I undertook an expedition back in 2000 and I think it was 9 or 10 in the Southwest Indian Ocean on seamounts which are very, very remote indeed. And we found microplastics in all of our samples, down to several thousand meters deep. The paper that was published from that expedition on plastics, which is Woodall et al. 2015, now has over 2,000 citations. That paper describes what we found, and subsequent studies showed that the microplastics weren't just in the sediments and on the sea floor, they were also all over the animals we collected and also inside them. So they'd actually ingested the plastics as well. And we think what's going on out in the ocean, the plastics are getting caught up in marine snow, marine phytodetritus, and are sinking into the deep ocean actually as those aggregations of organic material.
Yeah. Ibu Rita, how is it? I think also this is one of the big issue, yeah? How the microplastic affect the deeper water and the biota inside
Indeed, yeah.
the water. And I invite another questions. Is there any?
From the Philippines, Pa. I think there is
From the Philippines?
many from the Philippines also, our friends.
Yeah.
Yes, so Astrid, if you drop a line to us, then we can start to talk about what may be possible in the future. Verity is our scientific coordinator, but if you look at the Ocean Census website, then you'll find the contact details on there.
Okay. I think I will invite one questions.
Again, I have a question to Prof.
Okay.
Alex.
Okay. Please. Iqbal, Iqbal. Yes, please.
I'm Prof. Alex. I'm Iqbal from Department of Marine Science and Technology in IPB, currently pursuing my master degree. And related to your presentation, you gave information about more discovery of new species, particularly from the animal group. But do you have like information about other species other than animals, such as algae or macroalgae? Because we know that these species might be potential for bioprospecting. And the second one, how do you think the importance of the local museum in Indonesia? Because we know that Indonesia is has like a bigger continental island and everything. but the museum currently, I assume that all the specimen is centered in Java Island. And how do you think the local museum is important to discovering new species? Thank you very much.
Two very good questions, Iqbal. So Ocean Census works on all marine life apart from microorganisms. We figured that other people work on microbes. So we don't work on those, but we do work on seaweeds and we work on animal life as well. Seaweeds are extremely interesting. The first Nekton expedition, which I ran the science on, was to Bermuda. And we found there in mesophotic depths, again, this word mesophotic keeps coming up, a plethora of undescribed red algae. So below the depth where most of the marine herbivores lived, most of the herbivorous fish, there was this large diversity of red algae, many of which were undescribed. I suspect it will be the same in the Philippines and probably elsewhere in the world as well. So, you know, we view seaweeds as an important part of our work. So they're definitely in terms of ocean census. Local museums, we do believe, have a very important role in ocean census. The critical thing for us is that our samples are able to be curated and looked after over a long time period. So when we're looking at institutions within countries to store the material, it's important that those institutions are secure financially into the longer term, or that there are material transfer agreements between local museums and, say, more central museums within the country, so that if something does happen in terms of funding, the material can be transferred to another institution in country. But I would certainly think it's important in terms of probably lodging the type specimens in a central museum, but holding other type materials, so paratypes and so on, in local museums, so that local scientists have reference material to work with. So we can certainly look at ways of distributing material that gives the maximum benefit to the country. Just to say that our expeditions are normally followed by a workshop in country. So we go out, we collect material, and then we spend a month working through the material in country to start off that species sorting and discovery process. And those workshops can be undertaken at local institutions. We also have 2 containerized laboratories that can be transported anywhere around the world.
Any further question, Iqbal? I think
Tidak, Bang Begin.
okay. Thank you, Iqbal. Thank you, Alex, for the answers. Yeah, very important.
Thank you.
Who will manage the type specimen and then the other paratype? Yeah, will send to several museum. Yeah, for
Yeah.
the collection. I think share the collection is important. Yeah, because yeah, all the resource is it should be very important for the world, not
Yes,
only for
absolutely.
Indonesia or
Yeah.
for the countries, I think.
Yeah. Well, the critical thing is to avoid the kind of old colonial pattern of science where all the material disappears off to a museum in Europe or the US. And that is what we're trying to move away from. so that collections are held locally or at worst in a regional biodiversity centre. So, for example, we're looking at the South African Institute of Aquatic Biodiversity as a regional centre for the Western Indian Ocean.
Yeah, I think that's also a great idea. Yeah, make a regional connection. Yeah, amongst the country in the region, so they can access where is the center of the samples collection. So it's make easier to coordination and use the sample. Okay, Alex, I think it's time for us
Okay.
to end this talk. Very interesting and inspiring talk from Alex. So please give Alex a reaction. Okay. Yeah, love for Alex.
Thank you very much,
And
everybody.
for
Thank
the ocean census. And I think I will give you 1 minute for closing remarks for this talk. Please.
Yes, I will just say many thanks to Iskander and IPB for inviting me to talk. I sincerely hope that we can establish a series of expeditions in Indonesia, and then I'll have the opportunity to meet many of you personally. So huge thanks for attending this morning, and we very much look forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex,
Bye.
and thank you all the participants, and thank you, Verity, for initiating this meeting, and Pak Iskandar, and also Direktorat Konektivitas Global IPB. Thank you very much once again. Have a nice day and see you to the next IPB talk.
Thank you,
very
Pak
much.
Regin.
Afternoon
Bye-bye.
and good morning.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Bye, Verity.
Bye.
Kampus terbaik, inspirasi, tebarkan harapan. Kampus terbaik, inovasi, wujudkan impian. Kampus terbaik, integritas, kuatkan tujuan. Kampus terbaik, beri terbaik untuk negeri, untuk dunia, umat manusia dan alam semesta. Mari bersama hadirkan masa depan dalam langkah dan